night, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. My computer cut off again because my computer is old as dirt. My computer is old as dirt. Yes, it's just old because I refuse to upgrade because it just works well for me. But it's starting to not work well for me, so it may be time for me to make that upgrade. But anyway, welcome to Muffy Live. Thank you for coming on and engaging with me and talking with me. I am going to be ruffling some feathers tonight. So please take some time out to invite your friends, share this video right now so that other people can get this uplifting information that I'm about to share with you about mothering, about us as Black moms in particular. I'm going to be giving out some really great information tonight, and I want everybody to hear it. I want everybody to have a better understanding of the Black motherhood journey. So I'm inviting a few folks, so just give me a second and then I will just start talking. I think that's it. All right. So, hey, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Good night. Good night. So just to let you guys know, my publishing partner for tonight is My Heritage DNA. If you go in and check the link above this video, my publishing partner is My Heritage DNA. And if you guys remember a few months back, hey, Elle, I actually took the My Heritage DNA kit test. And actually, I got my, I probably got my results back like maybe 3 weeks after that, but it took me a while to post. Hey, Jessica. And so my results show that I am 72% Nigerian. I think it was 32% West African, 13% Irish, 1.3% South American, and then like 0.8% Chinese. So mostly Black, which I didn't need anybody to tell me. Hey, Heather, I didn't need anybody to tell me I'm Black. You know, so that's what I'm Black. I'm African. I'm Black. I'm blackity black, black, black. So pretty much. And I knew I was going to be part Irish because my great-great-grandmother is part Irish. So it was no surprise. But if you want to figure out some more about your roots, which you should and you will want to after this conversation, then go on ahead to the My Heritage DNA website. We have $12 off that code. You can use that code up there in the comments and get $12 off your kit, which I think is like $49. So you get $12 off of $49. I think it's a great thing to do, and you should. So I have been on quite the journey for the last 2 days. I recently developed I started reading this book called Magical Child, and I developed a real just interest in learning more about how children develop and why Black children tend to lag behind developmentally. And what I've been learning, because if you guys know me at all, if you've never tuned into one of my videos, you should know that, you know, I study everything from a perspective of being an African American. And so I wanted to study child development from an African-centered perspective, but that took me into learning more about child development from an indigenous people's perspective. And so what I really ended up starting to study was just how children were developing in indigenous societies. And when I say indigenous societies, I mean cultures and communities, villages, societies that have been in the existence since the earliest that we can find out, you know, from the research, science, anthropologists, just those societies, and why many times what I've ended up finding out was that I'll inbox you, Elle, is that indigenous children tend to be very much so developmentally and cognitively much further ahead of children in further developed worlds or more technologically savvy worlds. And the more I read, the more I'm finding out how much, like I always like to say, our kids don't need us, we need our kids. And so it was really interesting reading this book because it took me into reading some other books, and I've been reading a lot about why American babies cry so much. I know my kids cried a lot, all three of my kids cried a lot. And now through reading these books, I'm finding what the common denominator was. And the common denominator with my kids not crying was that I did not want to hold them. Because we are raised as African Americans, what do your parents tell you? Your grandmother tells you as soon as you have that baby is, don't hold that baby. Let that baby cry so that baby can get used to crying. Well, what I started to read in some of the books that I've been reading, because like I said, that was just the first. I've been reading a whole bunch of books. One of the things that I started to read was that in other societies, children become, and in more indigenous societies, children become a lot more confidently self-sufficient earlier because they are constantly held. And so whereas in American societies, a lot of times we tend to, what do we buy? Pack and plays, those things where the kids can walk. Now they have the one that sits the kid in they have the things that you sit the kid in, and the kid just sits there and cries the whole time. And so what I was finding when I was doing this research is that in indigenous societies, like Jess just said, the kids didn't cry because they were constantly wrapped to the mom's body. And so we really need to stop listening to that advice from our great grandparents not to pick the baby up. You need to pick the baby up. That's how the baby gains its confidence. That's how the baby kind of forms its, it forms a consistency within the child of knowing that the parent is going to be there, that the parent is not going anywhere. And so once the child knows that the parent is basically at their whim, like they need to be at that time, the child is then confident enough to say, okay, I've mastered this part. I feel nurtured. I feel loved. I feel content. Now I can go walk and crawl, and I'm not going to feel the need to always be up underneath the parent. And so it's the exact opposite of what we've been taught. And what is killing me, the more that I read, is figuring out that there is a parenting manual. Our ancestors wrote it, and they won't let us read it. The more I read about indigenous cultures, the more I'm finding that it is what our ancestors, our African ancestors, did indigenously is what produced cognitively advanced children who have advanced motor skills. Because what I'm finding is that every single book that I have read about child development prefaces the study done by a scientist with the last name Geber, I want to say Gazelle, where he went to Africa and he studied these African children in Kenya and Uganda and found that the children were far more advanced than children in America and in Europe. And what they found was that it was in the practices that the parents employed that caused the children to be much more advanced. And so, even with how African Americans tend to lay their babies on their stomachs, at the doctor's office, they'll tell you don't do that because it causes SIDS, but it actually doesn't. It just causes the baby to be able to walk or crawl sooner. And I wondered why with my youngest son and my middle son, they were both walking by the time they were 8 months old, like walking, they were walking. But I was a stay-at-home mom then. I spent more time with them. My middle son, I never put him down because he would not allow me. And so I just ended up getting a sling and keeping him on me 24 hours a day. And they both walked very early on, and they both slept on their stomachs because by the time they came home from the hospital, they were so used to being on me that was the only way I could get them to sleep, is if they either slept on top of me or slept on their stomach inside their little, they have those co-sleepers that you sleep with. And so a lot of times we are negating what our ancestors knew was right for Western ideas and ideas that have formed in Western culture. Everything from, I wrote down even about a book I read a while ago called The Congo Art of Babysitting, talked about how, in African cultures, children raise other children. I always say this is something you probably hear me say all the time, is that if we were an African village right now, right, at the age of, let's say, 14 to 35, we would not be raising children. We would not be anywhere, not to say we wouldn't be anywhere near the children, because it's definitely a village effort in most African cultures where the children are raised by the village. But for the most part, the children are with the children and the elders. People our age are, number one, not seen as having enough wisdom to rear children because we are coming into our own. We are learning, new things about ourselves on a cultural basis, on a societal basis, and figuring out what our norms are. But even more so than that, just getting down to the physical aspects of it, we are able-bodied. So if you are in a village, if you are living in a village setting, at your age, you getting water, you building houses and cooking food and, getting grains together to be cooked. So the children are essentially raising themselves, but it is to the benefit of the children because, number one, the children are learning how to be, they're learning reliability skills amongst each other. And the children are also learning the symbiotics of what it means to be in an interactive relationship where we feed off of one another's energy. So a lot of times we have this idea that adults need to structure play for children. How are you as an adult going to tell a kid what's fun? And there's this whole industry now that has been built on structuring play for children. And now we are to the point in our society where children don't have fun. They play video games and sit in a room all day. And we wonder how we got there. We got there because we have basically taken children and made them into an industry instead of allowing children to be children. And that's why in these African villages in the Congo, they don't entrust adults with children in that way, because children have a certain lightness about them. They don't take life superbly seriously. They know how to interact and how to even, I was reading in this book about the Aka pygmy people in the Congo, and it was saying how basically the children make fun of each other. They throw rocks at each other, but it's never it wouldn't happen the same way it would happen in an American school where somebody throws a rock at somebody and then somebody goes home and gets an AK-47 and shoots up the school. Because the kids build camaraderie amongst each other, and this camaraderie, this friendship, this love, this cooperative living follows them into adulthood, and now they become people who can solve problems on a very level of mutual understanding that does not exist in American society. So we have to get away from, number one, and I wrote that, I said, why do we as Black moms let our babies cry? Because we don't know our roots. And because we don't know our roots, we have basically allowed an entire society to come in and tell us what is best for ourselves, for our children, for our families. We talked about this last week about the structuring of families and how that no longer benefits us as a people, yet we still keep doing it. We still keep saying we got to have in the house a mom, a dad, and kids. A mom, a dad, and kids. When the mom knows she's dying on the inside because she can't do this by herself, and the dad knows that he doesn't even know where his place is in the household. So why do we continue to allow these structures that have essentially been built by another culture to work for us? It doesn't work for us. We know that these structures are not working for us. So why don't we begin to really, stop, number one, take inventory, utilize our intuition, this divine female intuition that we've been given, to begin to say, let's do something different. Let's shake up this box, because the way it's working right now is not working for us. And even in some of these books, it talked about the ease of potty training, how these babies are potty trained by the time they start walking in some of these African villages, because they are wrapped to the mom constantly and consistently. The mom, literally, when the baby has the urge to go, the mom already knows it. There was one book I read where the mom, the African mother in Kenya, laughed at the scientist, because the scientist asked her, how do you know when the baby has to go to the bathroom? Because the baby gave no physical sign of needing to go to the bathroom, but the mothers knew. Take the baby off, put the baby in the position it needs to be in to go to the bathroom. So the baby, by the time it was walking, was potty trained. But this is what we've allowed to be taken away from us. Not allowed, because it was strict. If I said allowed at any time in this broadcast, make sure you know that that's not true. It was stripped. It was taken. But now it is imperative. It is on us to go back and find it, to do our research, to begin to read, to go to the library, to begin to get them books on Amazon. You can get books on Amazon for a penny. I've gotten many books on Amazon for 1 penny. So it's imperative to us that we go back and do this research and go figure out what we lost and bring it back. That Sankofa thing is real. Sankofa is real. It is never taboo to go back and find that which is lost. Never. Especially if you know that it is what is keeping you entrapped. And so I wrote down, to me, all of this is about accountability. So once you start working towards self-mastery, that means that you equally start working towards self-accountability and self-examination. And once you work towards self-accountability in all areas of your life, from parenting to work to relationships, once you work to be accountable to yourself for everything that you do, then you can start to make the social structures around you accountable to your intercounting. So to what you have basically now said, this is what is necessary for me to master myself and to help those around me to master themselves. But we also, in turn, need a social structure that is also equally accountable to what we know is right, to our inner guidance system, to our intuition. And so I wrote down that a huge part of being a master of oneself is being accountable for one's thoughts, actions, and interactions. But accountability is funny in that it just leads you back to whomever or whatever you are accountable to. If you have chosen to be accountable to a culture that makes you act in a way that is out of order with your own self-interest, if you are accountable to a culture that makes you work in service to ideas and behaviors that cause you to live beneath your potential, then your accountability only seeks to serve those who will benefit from your action as one who is out of order. So basically what I'm saying is, once you work towards self-mastery, you have to work towards being accountable not only on the inside, but also on the outside. And then you have to start to question. Like for Black folks, nothing should be not up for questioning because we've been stripped. So everything down to the clothes you wear, to the way you parent your children, to the God you serve, to the social structures that inhabit your everyday daily life should be up for questioning because we know that we've been stripped. They told us there was no parenting manual, and I'm telling y'all, there's one. It is there. It is out there, but we have not been allowed to read it. So therefore, we need to begin to make the socialization that is occurring in our society accountable to what we intuitively know is right and wrong for our lives, for our families, for our communities, and then for us as a nation. So, I did the My Heritage DNA because I wanted to find out more about who I am indigenously. But that is a starting point. It is not an ending point. Once you understand what your roots are, then you need to go back and figure out what has worked for us. And that's regardless of what your roots are. What has worked for us, and how can we begin to make that something that is not just words? It's not just something we say to each other in passing, but then becomes a living entity, a living culture, a living what we do, breathe, mean, talk, speak, act, and think to one another that can be mutually beneficial for us. Because at this point, I think someone, and I'll be that someone if I gotta be, it ain't working, y'all. The family structure we got, it ain't working. How we parent our gods, it ain't working. The spiritual structures we have, they ain't working. They ain't working anytime you got a mass of people who are more religious, who are more educated than anybody in this nation, but cannot seem to build a community. It ain't working. So the question is, do we continue down this road of it not working, or do we begin to stop? And when I say stop, I don't mean stop feeding your kids dinner. I don't mean you don't, do anything and you just let your life stay still. But I mean stop with what you're thinking and go figure out why it's not working. Why do you send your kid to school every day and you still come out with educated children who cannot come back to your community and build a better community? Why is it that you are in a marriage and you love your husband and you respect your husband, but it's not working? Why is it that our elders remain people who are amongst the sick and shut in and are a permanent class of people who are forgotten? Why are these things happening? Question it. Why are we the most religious people on the planet and we still live in communities where there's 10 churches and gentrification? Why is it happening? I'm not telling you why it's happening, but I'm saying we need to ask, why is it happening? And once we ask why, then it is now our responsibility to be accountable and to fix it. It's really simple. Get back to your roots, not so that you can espouse some greatness of what African people are, but so that you can begin to understand how to fix it, because the problem is getting deeper with every single day. Every day you stay in the inertia of the American Western culture is every day that you are going to continue to be stuck. So that's what I got. Please share this video. Please invite people to watch it because, like I said, I just think it's time for us to stop, reevaluate, think, question, and move forward. So that's what I've got today, guys. Thank you so much. And ladies, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. Like I said, you can visit the MyHeritage website and you can get $12 off using the code that's in the link above this video. I appreciate y'all. I hope you have a good night and I love y'all to life. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.